some of you may have remembered a version of this from the Tower Hill demo. This is called a Morimono. And with Morimono, it's usually a very simple arrangement of a few materials. So there's no Kenzan on this, so I have to use skewers. So the symbolism here is a little bit New England style, because I wanted to have pumpkins for the holiday. So even though it's a few materials, it can be a little challenging. Explain to you what I'm doing with the sticks. I'm trying to get the orchid to stay. We love to leave the roots on the orchid so you can see how beautiful they are. So the sticks are just kind of around the base of the wood, just almost like holding it on instead of using wire or something like that. Okay, that's what I'm worried about. So now, many of you have probably seen Hanakanade at this point before. It's the latest style that headmaster Hiroki Ohara has developed. And it's gone through some transformations and changes over the past couple of years. So as you can see from the first arrangement, there's really no rule. It was more like, what's the story? What's the poem that you're trying to get across? And I use three kinds of materials. I use the orchid because it's kind of a unique material. I also use the pumpkin, but there's really no rule where you place. You do it according to your taste. Now this one, on the other hand, is a form. There are rules to the form, including the placement of the primary materials. So sometimes we do this in a round suiban, a round container. And in this case, we're doing it in three separate containers. And the containers basically need to be placed where we would put the kenzan in a round container. So these miscanthus are from my yard. I'd like to go really tall with these. They're just amazing. They're like 12 feet tall in the yard. But there are rules around how tall this can be based on the container diameter or the distance that you have. So these containers don't have kenzan, so we need to be creative how we get it to stay at the angle that we want. I don't know if this is going to work. You'll find out with me. If it doesn't work, then I have to add skewers, which is why I have those skewers over here. So many of the Ohara arrangements, we're not allowed to have branch material cross them. This is one of the few that you actually have to cross that material. And what we're trying to do is really emphasize the points where the material comes close to one another. This is a design style, so even though I'm using, in this case, kind of seasonal materials, there's still a design component to this. So it doesn't have to be completely natural. And in this case, I just really think this miscanthus is pretty awesome, so I'm going to use the same material for all three primary stems. little bit less natural. It is the same as miscanthus grass, but if I'd used the actual grass, it would have basically covered everything here. So I'm just trying to add a little bit of green in the container. And one of my rules is I can't have the material that's coming up here to support. Tom did one of these at the flower show this year. I don't know if any of you were able to actually go or did many arrangements. Unfortunately, we didn't get that second. Okay, so that's Hanakanade. showing something you've never seen before. It's a little bit of, the idea is that it's a free expression arrangement. So I think this one, similar to the arrangement that Tom's going to show you, really starts with the story. Of course, it's going to have certain things that maybe look like or other arrangements that we do in Ohara, because that's, you know, how you apply your skills. So this maybe looks a little bit like inclining form. But it kind of ends there, how it looks. So what's the story? Well, the inspiration for the story here is certainly the time of year. But I was kind of thinking of my father when I started to put this together. And he loved the outdoors, and as a kid we would do a lot of day hiking and see a lot of really cool things in the wilderness. Probably one of the reasons why I like Ohara so much is the emphasis on nature and natural things. So this is, you're seeing a scene that I'm creating that's not realistic in any way, but it's a scene that I'm trying to give you the feeling of being in the woods, maybe on a hike. You can envision seeing these materials, I'm sure. There's no reason to be grossed out. These were actually antlers that my father and I found in the woods. And the skull is plastic, so no animal lost its life to provide this beautiful component. Now, considering the as part of the container. So you can kind of envision walking upon this on a hike in the woods. Trying to build this scene for my story. I think Halloween may be also a little inspirational. So I'm actually going outside the container as well. And then there's a little bit of something you wouldn't expect to see, especially around here. It's a little fantasy along with the realistic. So what are these protea and I think they're called billy ball? To me, it's like maybe the spirit of the animal around stuff. Kind of idea. This is free expression. that one, which had some realistic natural components. This one is actually supposed to look like nature. And we can do shake Moribana in a lot of different ways. We could do a near view, we can do a far view, and we can do a middle view. So far view would have the trees in the back very small. Near view, which is what this one will be, it's as if you walked upon it in the woods. And then middle is somewhere in the middle. A little bit taller. Try to keep things to like the appropriate number. Yeah. So we want to do odd numbers of material for this. The thing about this is, just like the one I did before, that one's totally free. There are rules around this. But it's my design. There's no like prescription and branch lengths or that kind of thing. Probably my favorite fall branch material is liquid amber. Always has great colors. I was really disappointed when I went to the market and they didn't have any. They didn't have any out. So when I asked, there was a shipment, it just arrived. So I lucked out. This one can easily take an hour to do. This is lightning Ikebana. enough. Ken's on.
I could have brought some. No, you want to do it the hard way.
This is the most important part, is the frame here. Once you've kind of framed it with your branch material, I'll just hold on to this so you can take the rest. Moribana, realistic landscape. So this one's Rimpa, which we'll be finishing with today. He's so good. The idea is your Japanese School of Painting and the type that you would see on the screen dividers in some of the nicer Japanese manners. So this is also pretty free within that concept. So like you're thinking of poetry over here, otherwise no rule. And here you're trying to paint a picture that would go on either a big fan or a screen. On these screens, you'll see clumps of flowers that don't necessarily grow that way in nature. You could be highlighting a certain kind of flower for a certain season. And yes, it's okay to use white. Rimpa is often, I guess the way I've heard it explained is like exaggeration. So you're kind of exaggerating the way the flowers would look. So I'm kind of envisioning this painting on a Japanese fan. I don't want to have material up here. I want to keep it in that space. painting, sometimes you want to see the different angle. Okay, that's my work.